How to learn a language. Well, very interesting. And it seems that, because I don't believe anyone has all the answers, but one clear thing is it seems to happen in steps and stages of one's life. So I'm going to read this uh, that was written on Master the Language uh, before, right around the time of 2006, and this was reflection then. Okay, um, and I'm going to read it because one, it helps people who are trying to learn how to read. They can see this as well. Maybe not English may not be their first language or your first language, so I'll read it so that people can digest it. And I know since this is a video, reading it gives the words that can feed into a closed caption, and someone can choose to change it into their own language. So what I'll do is I'm going to read this here and then talk to it a little bit. It's not that much, and I'm very sensitive of paying attention to people when they talk because I have an attention span of a gnat sometimes. I don't really follow. So I'm going to try to read this and then go through and we'll talk through it. I don't want to pretend like I have all the answers because I really don't. Um, and like I said, I don't believe anyone really does. I believe it's a gift from God to be able to speak and communicate and listen or communicate non-verbally, sense things, and uh, that let's leave it there for now. But let's talk about how to learn a language. Okay, learning a language is like learning to ride a bike. Now, for many of us, we learned to ride a bike in the early years of life. We were taught how to ride a bike, and it happened in steps. First, it began with a tricycle, if you were fortunate enough to have that. We sat on it not knowing what to do at all. Eventually, we learned how to pedal, and we liked it. It was fun. Then we went really fast. Then we moved up to the next stage, a two-wheel bike, perhaps with training wheels and assistance from someone. Next, we learn how to go fast and to stop so that we don't crash into anyone or anything. Slowly, we became confident, and it was time to try without training wheels. One training wheel off, then finally the next one removed. Voila! Eureka! We were able to ride a bike on our own. Let me stop there for a second. This makes a lot of assumptions that someone had the benefit of having training wheels and a bike and someone to teach them. Everyone didn't learn that way. Some people learned right from a two-wheel bike and falling down a lot until you learn to keep your balance. Some people have never learned to ride a bike. Okay? Once we learned how to ride a bike without any assistance or training wheels, that is when the real fun began. Some of us decided to be a little more daring after learning the basics of riding a bike and start doing tricks, wheelies, endos, jumps, BMX races, distance races, 10K bike rides, world tours, etc. However, it all started with the fundamental of riding a bike without assistance. Okay, and then for those who have stopped riding a bike for a long period of time, the first return to riding a bike again feels like we have lost something. Okay, but a quick refresher revives all that we had learned, and we are riding a bike again in no time flat. The interesting fact is that once the barrier of riding a bike without assistance has been crossed, there's no way to go back to the days of not knowing how to ride a bike. We know how to ride a bike forever. Now let me stop there for a second. we know how to ride a bike. That does not mean we know how to do wheelies, endos, jumps, BMX races. Can we go down a half pipe? Most people can't do that or terrified to do it. Didn't build the skill or develop the skill to do it, especially like something like endos, or you're doing bunny hops, or you're hopping on one tire. You learn how to ride standing on your bike, standing on your seat, put your feet on your handlebars. There's many different tricks and nuances to riding a bike once you have that base experience, where you can go through and develop a whole repertoire of skill sets. But the fundamental is we got built the confidence and we learned how to ride a bike without assistance. All right. So this page compares language learning, the process of language learning, to that. Steps to breaking the language barrier. We believe that language is learned in very much the same way as learning how to ride a bike. Of course, language learning is not putting your feet on pedals and as simple as just holding the handlebar steady and balancing. Language is much more complicated and involved, but fundamentally, building that base within yourself. That's why it says here, at first when we are presented with a new language, we hear it and see it and have no idea what we are listening to and seeing. This includes our native language. When we're young and we're growing up, we don't understand what's going on. Slowly, our ears, situations, we start understanding. So we cannot understand anything. After a little exposure to the language, we start to hear the sounds of the language and understand some of the basic words like hello, how are you, good morning. Of course, if you're really young in your house, you will understand the verbal and nonverbal cues from your caretakers, whether that's your mom or your guardians or your older siblings or friends or the shelter you're at. Wherever it is, the person's going to develop a skill of recognizing patterns of communication coupled with the language that's being spoken or communicated to that person. Then, after more practice with the language, we begin to formulate our own phrases and ideas within the language, with correction from others that already know the language. We're corrected. That's fundamentally what's happening. This predates going to academic schooling at this point. This is fundamental how I'm communicating with the world around me and how the world around me is communicating with me, right? Eventually, we are able to start thinking in the language. Oh, just a sidebar. Remember, it's fortunate societies that people can attend the school and start learning academics to start bridging a lot of educational gaps and learning so that it becomes a stronger tool to use. But some societies and some people don't have access to that. But they can speak and communicate better than those who went to school in some situations. The literacy may not be there. They may not be able to read and write, so that can be a limitation. But they can speak and communicate with wit and very quick, and depending on what the situation is. Okay. For common situations, we find that we have command in the language and can stand on our own. Then, as our vocabulary builds, we begin to feel confident in more situations. Many situations present themselves and have been presented before. Okay? Our brain is always working. When we're born into a household that communicates to us in a language, whether, again, verbal or nonverbal, using words and phrases, we're in that presumably 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for many years. Okay? The brain is always moving. The patterns are matched. we begin to automatically, through template modeling, we start mimicking what people do around us. We can't control that. That's part of human nature. And part of that comes with the communication, because we have to respond to the world around us, especially in our own household. So for someone that's trying to learn, or when we're trying to learn a new language that's different than the language that we were used to having all of that deep exposure to, we do have to take steps. But it's similar to like learning how to ride a bike, at least for the fundamental level. This doesn't mean that you can get read and write and do and speak and have conversations and have elaborate thoughts in the language. No, we're talking about the fundamental of feeling comfortable to put your foot on the pedal and you can balance the bike. So here are the key steps to breaking the language barrier. Okay, if you follow these here, I know I talked a lot on this one, but something's telling me to at least talk to this. I don't have all the answers. I can't tell you that I'm speaking 80 languages or 8 or 20 or 30 or 40. What I can tell you is I have gained some confidence with being able to, and experience with being able to adapt. I know how to put my foot on that pedal of a bike for different languages. That doesn't mean I can do the endos and the BMX and jumps and wheelies, but I'm able to feel comfortable enough and confident enough to learn if I really need it. Okay, so here are the key steps, and you can do the same thing. This is what I'm trying to share with you, is that you can do the same thing. Here are the key steps to breaking the language barrier. Start off with little or no knowledge of the language. All right? So let me read all these and then I'll go one by one and then we'll stop and close it. And that will be it for now. And then I'll make a separate talk about sharing thoughts about other aspects of the language. Create an environment to be exposed to the language as much as possible. Invest in resources to learn the language. Practice the language as much as possible. Test your knowledge of the language by practicing and self-test. Make mistakes and allow others to correct them. Okay? Start off with little or no knowledge of the language. This may be a brand new language that one wants to learn, that you're interested in for a variety of reasons. All right? But you're starting from zero, that's fine. Many people have learned the language that you want to learn. It can be done. It's not impossible. Sometimes when we get educated, we begin to believe that people who are not educated can't do what we do, but I don't look at it that way. I believe that anything that anyone else has done, especially on a fundamental level, I can do. And you can do it too. All right? So it might take a little more work. It might take an alternate way of learning. It may take you overcoming or dealing with some shortcomings that you have as a person, whether your sensory is off or your brain's not remembering a certain way, or you can't hear, or you can't read, or you can't. There's a lot of things that a list of things that we can put there that would be viewed as things that can hinder us from learning, but with determination you can do it. Okay? Create an environment to be exposed to the language as much as possible. Now, what does that mean? First, you don't have to go to any of the mother tongue countries to be able to learn that language at a fundamental level. All right? And the reality is, you would want to be able, if you're from one country and you're going to another country, the time to learn the language is definitely, in my opinion, not as soon as you hit the ground in that country. Yes, you're going to learn brute force that way. But the benefit you want to have, if you have the chance to do it, some people don't have the chance because they have to migrate quickly. But if you have the chance to do it, the thing is you want to get your foot used to being on the pedal of the bike before you even go to that target country, before you go there. So you do that by doing small things to help yourself create an environment in that language. Now, it depends on the level of immersion you want to create for yourself. Okay, it may just be, let me read and try, if I can read, let me read in the language a little bit every day. Or let me play a song, or if I like music. For example, I like to play music and I love songs, certain kinds of songs all across all genres. But I've found that I've attached to different songs in the languages that I'm interested in, and play it over and over and over again. I mean, not over and over and over in one day 1,000 times, maybe for some, but just kind of keeping him there, building the library of music is another way. Or maybe a TV show, or today might be a YouTube video, or something that gives you an attachment to that language so that you can really practice. Then here you have invest in resources to learn the language. Now, resources come in all shapes and sizes today. Okay, from my perspective, I recommend whatever is most effective and beneficial for you to help yourself gain confidence in the language, to help you feel good that you're making progress in the language. There's a number of language apps out there: Duolingo, Babbel, Rosetta Stone, LinkQ, many YouTube videos of YouTube schools or people teaching. There's, of course, there's Mastering the Language. There's Transparent Language. There's Berlitz. There's Zoni Language School. There's so many different schools, softwares. There's radio. There's radio stations. There's TV. There's streaming you can get. The thing about it, what I realized, this is there's the idea of collecting materials and resources in the language that really doesn't help you learn the actual language. It's good for a collectible. You know, you can collect all this stuff I just said. You can download the apps and bring them onto your phone. You can buy books and you can know all the different people and watch people talking about how they learn language on YouTube. But the reality is that doesn't give you the skill. You really get the skill. What I've learned is you get the skill when you're really practicing yourself. Watching other fascinating people who can speak and learn how to speak and listening to their stories is really deeply, one, it helps you to build confidence that you can do it. And if they're speaking in your target language, then that's perfect. But if it's just someone waffling about what they've done, it's great to attach and feel good. It's good for that confidence builder. But the work really comes from ourselves, yourself, taking advantage of one or more resources that you've chosen that can help you to learn. And, you know, if you're someone, like for me, like I said, my attention span is, I get bored of a certain particular thing. So for me, I have multiple, you know, and this is just not just for language, this is with anything I do. I would have, let's say, different books that I can read at similar time, or, you know, so that when I get kind of losing kind of interest in this part of the book, I go to a different book, or I watch something, or I listen to something to keep me interested. Yeah, someone had recommended that to me years ago when they saw how I was, how I like to learn, and they realized I had a shortcoming which I could use for strength. It was one of my mentors who said, "Listen, if you have to always find things that keep you interested, and then you can maximize your learning." Um, so then here, practice the language as much as possible. Now, this one here, this is my opinion, and I have some experience with this. Um, it really depends on who you are and your personality and what you're trying to achieve and why you're trying to learn this language. Language itself is not finite. You can't just say, all right, let me study for 2 months and I'm done. Breaking the language barrier, you can do that. Learning how to keep your foot on that pedal. Learning how to balance the bike. If you focus for 2 months and that's your goal, you can break that barrier. But language itself, we're always learning for a lifetime. So practicing the language as much as possible really depends on your goal. If you're in a relationship and your spouse or partner or the person that you're interested in is speaking the language that you're trying to learn, then it may be, partial your own time learning and sharing and sitting and listening a lot around that individual and their family or their friends, and you get that exposure. That all adds into which I didn't mention on this talk here, the bucket of if your brain works in this way, I think mine does, there's a bucket there for the language that's kind of empty. You kind of keep filling, adding more things into it. And there's like a synergy of experience that grows with that language over time. Okay? And you can never just say, all right, I'm done, I don't have to do any more. Right? It's kind of like it's progressive exercise over time. All right? Okay, so that leads to the next part. Test your knowledge of the language by practicing and self-test. Anyone who's listening to this, again, learning how to ride a bike, but especially if you played sports before, or you were able to compete, or you're learning how to play an instrument, or you're learning how to read faster, or you're learning how to type on the keyboard, or type. Before it was typewriters, now it's keyboards, or even your smartphone, or you're learning how to remember things in a different way, or how to study more accurately, or you're learning how to bake something or create a pie with a certain type of crust, or you're trying to build a garden, or you're trying to do anything that requires skill, really. The way you can gauge it is you kind of put yourself and test yourself. You practice and you test yourself. Can I really bake this pie? Let me try it. Right? So for language, it's no different. We practice. We can study all we want, but the thing is, without the study materials there, and you're in front of something, let's say you like mastering a language, which is why it's kind of designed like it is. When you're in front of the real language target that you're looking for, can you do it? Can you answer the simple matching problems in that language? And it's if you can, it's not a bad thing. It just helps you to know, where do I really stand? Like, anybody can rote memory. Well, not anybody, but people can remember something to say a line or two. But if I'm presented with a situation where I need to practice and test myself, right? Can I really do it? And I'm going to talk about that on a different chat. But that's one of the reasons why mastering a language is designed. It's not about mastering a language being something. It's about helping someone see themselves. can I really answer these simple matching questions where, oops, there might be a little bit more complexity to the matching, and I really need to know the language. It's designed to help you self-test and practice. And the last thing is make mistakes and allow others to correct them. Hey, here's the thing. Mistakes, in my opinion, mistakes are required to learn and build experience in anything you're doing. Not just language learning, anything you're doing. So that means, and mistake doesn't mean that you purposely do something wrong. No, that means you from what you know today, you're trying something, and then you realize after trying it, oops, you didn't do it the right way. You realize that you were saying a word in the language, and later you get with the real native, and it's complete. It doesn't sound anything like you remembered it. Someone corrects you. That's a great thing. I work with someone, I'll give you an example. This is a very studied individual, and I think they even had a master's degree and blah, 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 right? And we were talking about, I don't know how we got to this topic, but we were talking about the human body and physiology and something like that. And the person was saying, well, the amoeba is the blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I'm hearing what this person's saying, but I have no idea what amoeba is, right? And then the more that person said it, I realized from going to school and, my younger days in school, they were talking about the amoeba, which I still don't know exactly what it really is, but I know that word because I remember how it was spelled. And then I said to that person, wait, do you mean amoeba? Oh, yeah, I learned it as amoeba because that's what that person was saying because I studied on my own and that's how I know. But they could describe it like a scientist. But just to hear that, and when I said, oh, here we say amoeba, wow, it was like an eye-opener for that person. They were thankful that I said that, and it was an eye-opener for me because then I realized that someone who studied and learning and using a language in a certain way, it could be based on where you're from, the country you're in, the accent that's used, the people who've taught you, the things you've done by self-teaching yourself, that can result in you having a style that maybe others don't recognize and maybe needs to be corrected. But that's okay. The point is being open from a language perspective to allowing people to make mistakes and allow people to correct them. Go to the restaurant, and the last thing I'm going to say is all of this is all based on your personality too. You don't have to be an extremely outgoing person to make mistakes, and you don't have to only be an introverted internal person to only make mistakes. It's really up to your comfort level. But what you should have the confidence of knowing is if you're trying with your comfort level, with your personality, if you're trying within your level where you're at and you don't do it 100% right, then you're doing something right, okay? Because that means that you have a chance to build that experience and get to the point where at some point you will really understand how you want to present what you're saying so that other people can understand you and so they get it and maybe they've corrected you and you keep going. All right? I'm going to stop there. How to learn a language. Just a quick summary. Remember, language is very complicated in general. I don't have all the answers. I have some experience There's thousands of people that you can even see today on YouTube and the Tube of You and all these other places where they're showing you how smart they are. And a lot of people have a lot of experience. But nonetheless, language itself is very complicated. I believe it's a gift from God. We can break through the fundamental language barrier, which is feeling comfortable that I'm getting it. Remember, like learning how to ride a bike. I can pedal, I can balance. And you do that by practicing and exercising. And from there, the sky is the limit. I don't know. It's up to you and your situation and where you're trying to get to and who you want to be. How, and your own personal skill, your personality, the things that you've been given, the talents you've been given from God Himself. All that plays into how far I believe one gets into the language and how deep you can get and how much you really need it. That will determine the level at which you arrive at. But breaking the language barrier just starts with taking a step and trying. All right? That's it. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.